Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just Another Esports podcast. Once again, joined by me, your host, Nicholas Shady Bacon, and my co host, Mr. Kevin Hubris. We are not joined by a special guest this time, but we still have Josh's wonderful predictions that he did have for the Champs weekend. I was thinking of maybe not doing this episode, but with all the fun and crazy stuff that happened during the playoffs weekend, and I guess kind of the 3 days leading up to the weekend of playoffs, I felt the need that maybe we should probably do a podcast to cover kind of all the craziness that happened, and then maybe give our updated predictions, I guess, for the championship weekend, since three of the teams we thought would be there are still there in Chicago, FaZe, and Dallas. However, Florida is not there. London Royal Ravens is in there in that fourth spot. So there probably won't be too much of a change in those predictions, but we'll just jump kind of right into the first match that we saw on that weekend, which was the Paris Legion versus the Seattle Surge. And the Paris Legion took that in dominating fashion over the Seattle Surge in a 3-0 sweep. And this was off the back of some stellar hardpoint play out of the Paris Legion. Honestly, Seattle just looked completely lost on that gunrunner hardpoint. And then, honestly, the search and destroy, it's been the story all season. Seattle, they just cannot win S&D rounds. They get first blood, they have the man advantage, and then they just throw their lives away over and over and over again. And one of the kind of highlights of that was probably when Seattle was up 5-4. I believe they had bomb down, and it was a 2v1. It was Slacked and Apathy versus, I want to say, Shocks in that 2v1. And Slacked immediately just ego chows Shocks and throws his life away and puts him in a 1v1 scenario against Apathy, because Apathy was nowhere near to trade him out. And it's just stupid mistakes like that has plagued Seattle throughout their entire season, and is one of the biggest reasons that they just are such a terrible S&D team, is that they get advantages and then they throw them away. And we saw that in the finals, or I guess in their final match for playoffs, right then and there. And then they moved on to the domination, and Paris took a commanding lead, and Seattle was able to kind of surge back into that, pun intended, but they were not able to kind of clutch up in the end there and close it out. And afterwards, you kind of saw Slacked being a bit of a sore loser and taking to Twitter, calling out Paris, saying that they cheated in the domination, and pointing to a small clip of the match, saying that I believe Zed spawned up in less than 5 seconds using some so-called domination glitch that apparently was patched for champs this coming weekend. I watched the clip, a bunch of other people watched the clip, and I think we all can agree, what the hell is he talking about? Zed died before Dens. Dens spawned up before Zed, spawned up in 5 seconds, counted it, looked at the clock. He spawned up, it took 5 seconds for him to respawn, and Zed was probably, I'm assuming, doing something with his class or something, because he took even longer than 5 seconds to respawn. So if you're going to do something as serious as accuse a team of cheating in playoffs, you better have some solid proof. Yeah, at least do the actual math and not lie and just make a fool of yourself. An absolute fool of yourself. So
4, 5. You have fingers for them too, Slacked. It's okay, buddy. Much love. So, I think my reaction is summed up from this match in one simple way. So I was in the process of tweeting out, I wonder how long it's going to be until Octane uninstalls Modern Warfare from his device. Or I was going to say, I wonder if he already did. And before I could get the tweet out, I see on the timeline Octane making a video of him uninstalling Modern Warfare. And honestly, there couldn't be a better way to cap off Seattle Surge's abysmal season. Yeah, this is going to be the nightmare fuel for Octane for years to come. Gosh, for a lot of those players, this was not a good season for them. They didn't even try. It looked like, I mean, they had some decent hard points, don't get me wrong, but I mean, that's not hard whenever you have a guy like Octane that can hold down a lane.
yeah,
You know, the
and
the turret himself. But Paris also did look pretty good this tournament. I mean, obviously they didn't go very far, but from where they were, definitely looked like they had a lot of improvement. So I think GG's at Paris in this one.
Yeah, especially in the hard point, like that hard point against Seattle Surge was just so clean. And me and Josh, we should have listened to you. You got it right. I put too much faith in them saying, "Yeah, we're doing really good in scrims." Well, I guess I should have listened to what I had said when Silly was saying Minnesota was doing good in scrims. Well, you're doing good in scrims, but you're not doing good in actual matches. So, point to you there. My faith in the Seattle Surge is slim to none. I kind of hope they just gut this team. Probably, honestly, I would just keep Apathy and Octane. Get rid of everyone else. It's interesting to say the least. But going back to kind of this domination glitch, like as soon as I also saw that tweet, I noticed that it was just a blatant lie. I also reached out to Josh saying, like, how long has this been in the game? Because this is the first time I'm hearing about it. It's the first time I've seen pros saying anything about this Dom glitch. So how the heck has it not been fixed by now? Like,
Well,
there was when well, I know why. It's because IW doesn't give a crap about competitive.
No, it got fixed.
But it's literally the first time I've seen anyone complain about it the whole year. When the hard point glitch, the mini-map glitch was happening in respawn modes, I instantly saw people talking about that. I hadn't seen anyone talk about this domination glitch all year. And now it comes up for playoffs?
It's more realistically like how much of a boost is it, you know, go like changing your spawn time from 5 seconds to 3.5 seconds. It's like, really, this is what we're gonna waste our time with. But as soon as Slack's video,
Yeah, I mean,
out,
1.5 seconds in some of these matches, it would actually kind of make a difference. That 1.5 second difference, but it's also inconsistent.
Exactly.
Is the thing.
It would be different if everybody was doing it at the same time every single time. But I mean, even if every player was attempting to do it, it's not a high success rate. Like, it happens, but I mean, it's just these guys are pro players. Like, they're gonna whine and cry about every single little thing that happens, you know, that needs fixed. Usually, that's a really good method of feedback. And you know, when Treyarch has the game, when it's Treyarch's turn to be the good parent, then you know it's better, right? But IDub, they've just been absolutely god awful on the competitive scene. This domination glitch was just a cherry on top. Everybody was already like roasting IW over finally fixing this glitch.
Yeah, what was this? It was Wednesday the first day, or was Thursday the first day of playoffs? I can't even remember. It was Thursday, wasn't it? I believe it was Thursday.
No, Wednesday.
No, it was Wednesday. Okay,
Yeah,
it was Wednesday.
We played the two.
Wednesday
like,
was just
matches, basically
plagued with so many issues. Wednesday, I think Thursday might have been plagued with issues as well, but Wednesday was just kind of the worst of it all.
Oh yeah.
And we see that kind of moving on into the second matchup that we saw on that day, being the Battle of LA, Optic Gaming LA versus the LA Gorillas. And that went all the way to a game 5, only because Kenny got booted offline twice in that match. Both times it happened in the hard point, which is the one where you don't want it to happen because there is no halfway point. There is no break where they can end the game, restart it at that max score, and get them back into the lobby and continue on with their lives. So incredibly unfortunate. Honestly, like, everyone under the sun was probably rooting for Optic. Like, you had to be rooting for Optic in those kind of scenarios where, like, that just absolutely kind of sucks, where it's completely out of your hands. Someone's doing it to you, and they called in the ice, not really the Iceman, but they called in Dashy from his beach house resting, got out of bed, put on his boots, and went to work with the sniper on Piccadilly, netting them that Game 5 win against the Gorillas. But my, oh my, that was some crazy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. The things that I have seen in this champs has been absurd. I mean, like, I can't remember a time where I was this baffled about all the kind of crazy stuff that happened in this playoff weekend. Truly, you know, truly has made the year for sure. Even though it's been absolutely wild, and there's been some really stellar performances this year. London home series really comes to mind when I think of that. This one's been great, except for the Chipotle burritos thing. That's kind of not it, you know.
Well, you don't like free burritos?
Yeah, if you could get free burritos, you
I
kidding me?
well, Josh is 3 for 3 on the burritos, so you may want to hit him up for the
Josh,
the secrets.
Josh is a big old YouTuber, and they're probably like, "Oh, this is Salvation's Elite." Well, if he has all this about getting free burritos, people are just gonna go to Chipotle anyway. See, that's the thing. Super smart. You hand out like 100 whole burritos, and then you're like, okay, now everybody just wants Chipotle. All
Yeah,
two
but
hundred thousand at times. What was?
I am really glad though that after this they decided not to play the matches live because of all these booting issues. But even so, like, why is this even an issue? Like, how are these people booting these players offline? I League of Legends has been online longer than Call of Duty has for this COVID pandemic. And I have not heard of a single issue with their players getting booted offline. So, like, I don't know what Kenny or the COD pros are doing to get their IPs out there, but, like, just stop doing that. Like, what the hell? I have never heard of, like, honestly, I think COD pros are the only people that suffer from internet issues in these times. Like, what is going on? What is the difference between you and every other pro that is playing in an online league that you are the only ones plagued by these issues?
Yeah, you'd imagine you'd probably like call ahead to your internet service provider and be like, "Hey, so I'm playing for a lot of money. Can I just make sure that I don't have any drops within, the first few days or anything like that?" It may not help, but it may not hurt either. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
mean,
At this,
four of Optic's players are all in the same facility somewhere in Texas, I do believe, and I don't know how they're able to boot. They must all be playing on different IPs because only Kenny was the one getting booted off. And based on kind of the backgrounds from their webcams, it seemed like they were all in the kind of the same room or facility or something along those lines. So they all got to be playing on different IPs. How are people getting a hold of these IPs to boot them off? Like, it just blows my mind that Call of Duty pros seem to be the only ones that have these kind of issues.
yeah, you're not kidding. It is frustrating, and it really sucked to see that multiple times because it always leaves that, well, what if they didn't get booted off? Uh, it's an online tournament. At the end of the day, it's an online tournament, and this stuff kind of happens really all the time. And be it shitty for the teams to lose a guy like that and then just have to keep playing on because you just know you're gonna lose, or not. It's the biggest thing is that like you have to have strict rules like this for competitive integrity because there is literally no way you could check, you know, oh, was this really whatever you said it was, or did you just turn off your PlayStation because you just weren't happy with, the fact that they had a better first half in Dom than you or something. So I think that it will, I think it'll sort itself out. I think that the league will probably take a harder look at restructuring rules after this season's over, just to make
Yeah, they
sure.
did add that hard point rule, but honestly, like, most of the time players are getting booted. It's when the score is way past 125. So
Right. Well,
don't.
what I'm saying is that the Call of Duty League is there to represent competitive Call of Duty from the developers. So they work closely with the developers. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
If competitive Call of Duty has developers that support it next year, like they will with Treyarch, I would imagine that a lot of rules are going to change because Treyarch's probably already thinking about how to improve this process for competitive,
I would
servers and all
hope
that.
because I 100% see at least this next year of Call of Duty being entirely online.
I I'm right there with you. I really it
And I
sucks.
know a lot of people may hate to hear that, but I honestly do not see with how stupid Americans are in dealing with COVID that we are going to be able to have any type of live event or any kind of gathering of people in that aspect. Maybe like I guess maybe they can just do only the pros and it wouldn't be live events. But at that point, that's coming at like a huge expense to the league, and they may not even want to do that when they have the option of doing everything online. And it's going to start back up in January. And if anyone's listening to any medical experts, they predict that COVID's going to get a lot worse come winter. So
Yeah, enough of the doom and gloom. Can we get on to
yeah.
the next
Let's
match?
moving on to the positives with the Toronto Ultra, who took on the London Royal Ravens and won that 3-1. They took the hard point, took both hard points actually, and they took the gunrunner domination. Then they lost the S&D to the Ravens in their first matchup. So there wasn't too much exciting really there. I predicted that London was going to take the Toronto Ultra in that matchup. I thought the Ravens were going to clutch that up 3-2 against the Ultra simply because I didn't have a crazy amount of faith in the Ultra. I knew they were a good team. They've been extremely consistent all year long. However, I felt like a lot of people were buying into the recency bias of their past Toronto homestand victory, in which they realistically barely won that off the back of just some incredible clutch plays. But
Yeah,
this
hero runs
matchup
for
against
sure.
Toronto was very, very clean on the side of the Toronto Ultra. None of the matches were very close. They all had respectable leads in the maps that they were taking against the London Royal Ravens. So just all around, very clean on the side of the Toronto Ultra.
I think the only thing I want to talk about this match is I think the recency bias did play really big into this. I could have seen this go really either way. I mean, I also selected London over Toronto, and I really didn't think too much of this game until Toronto started really heating up against some good teams. But I mean, GG's to them for this round. Spoiler alert, they play again.
Moving on to a different matchup, which was the Subliners versus the Rocker. All of us thought thought New York was going to take this 3-1 over the Rocker. They did take it 3-1 over the Rocker. However, the hard points were a lot closer than I think any of us would have expected them to be in this matchup. I mean, the Rocker kind of barely lost these. The Mazda was a 250 to 228, and then the Hackney hard point was a 250 to 248. So both of those were incredibly close. And I think that point there in that series with Rocker, because all of us realistically didn't have a lot of faith in Rocker to be that great of a team going into this, simply because of how poor their performance has been leading up to playoffs, even with the roster change. And Exceed actually doing quite well on that roster, on that Rocker squad in the playoffs. This matchup for me brought about some questions in kind of how strong this New York lineup would actually be moving through the champs weekend, because if their hard point was looking kind of that shaky against the Rocker, who we didn't have as a very solid team going into playoffs, how would they match up against kind of the other teams going on? And like looking kind of at the score lines for that, we kind of saw New York outslaying quite heavily in both of those victories. However, they were not winning by a very significant margin, which means that their kind of map rotation and their play in the hard point was not kind of what we were accustomed to when we saw New York playing incredibly clean, dominant hard point back when they were kind of rising up before their New York homestand event that they did end up winning. Moving on to, I think, our first Friday matchup, which was the Chicago Huntsmen versus the New York Subliners. And Chicago, they ended up taking that 3-2 over the New York Subliners. So that was a lot closer of a series than maybe I would have thought, kind of looking at the prior day hard points that the Subliners did have. Surprisingly, I was worried about the Subliners hard point when they played that Minnesota matchup, since it didn't look that great. However, in the Chicago matchup, it looked pretty damn good. They took both hard points in this series against Chicago, lost an incredibly close Arklov S&D round 11, and an incredibly close gunrunner domination. And then he just kind of got blown out in that St. Petro S&D, which we know is Chicago's kind of bread and butter. It's also one of New York's better S&D maps as well, so that kind of really stung for them I do imagine, in that Game 5 loss. But talking about kind of Chicago, boy, oh boy, Pristini has had a god-awful champs up until kind of their last match,
Yeah.
which, spoiler, was against Optic Gaming LA. Honestly, Chicago would not have even beaten this New York Subliners team if it was not for Scump just
Scum.
completely going ham in
King
every
Scumpy.
single game mode.
He went 12 and 1. 12 and 1. He was going 8 and 0 in Search and Destroy against the Subliners. What? Imagine being like, yeah, I had a 12.0 KD at COD Champs. What? Unbelievable. Yeah, no, hero plays to Scump for sure. Envoy
And
also
honestly,
very solid.
Arcides also has had a
And
pretty
Arcides.
rough event to this.
No, I think Arcides has come in when he needs to come in, and I think
He's
he's
come
done
in when
quite
he's
well.
needed to come in, but he's had some really rough maps at champs. Him and Pristini both have had some pretty rough maps.
Yeah, and then there's been a couple with formal as well that were kind of rough, but oddly enough, the consistent guys are the guys running the subs,
Yeah,
which
every match Chicago's played has gone to a Game 5. Like, Chicago is winning these because of their Game 5 S&Ds.
yeah, I mean ice. That's it. That's it. That's all that's in their veins, especially Envoy. But we'll get to that one later too. Oh my gosh. Oh man, this was an exciting weekend for sure.
Yeah. All right, but that was our Chicago-New York matchup. Chicago takes that. The next matchup we saw, which this one was a big surprise, I think, to a lot of us, was the Toronto Ultra taking the series against the Florida Mutineers 3-1. And this was a really close matchup, in all honesty. I mean, Toronto, they barely took the easier hard point. That was 250 to 232. They lost the Piccadilly S&D 6-4, took the Hackney Dom 161 to 156, and then they won the St. Petro hard point 250 to 249. That was an insane hard point at the end there. A lot of crazy micro decisions between the Florida Mutineers and the Toronto Ultra that Toronto was just barely able to squeak that out on top of the Mutineers in that hard point. Just a ton of crazy quick decision making at the last second of that St. Petro hard point that gave Toronto the edge to win that and knock the Mutineers down into the losers bracket.
And I guarantee you, like what's going through your mind at that point, whenever you lose like 249 to 250, is there's definitely got to be a hill that I could have stayed an extra second on, and then it would have been different. And every player's thinking that, and it's just such a hard feeling, especially they were up the entire time in that Petro hard point. They were up for a very long time, and then I mean, for Toronto to make a comeback like that and just sweep the carpet out from underneath you, that's unbelievably hard. And I think it set the tone for Florida's week because they never really found their groove, you know.
No, they did not. And they, after losing to that Toronto Ultra roster, they unfortunately got knocked down to face probably the fourth best team at playoffs, if we're being completely honest, in this OGLA squad.
Oh yeah, no doubt. If
But we'll
yeah, no, we'll get to that later.
yeah, we'll get to their matchup in a bit. But that was our first. Those were our two winners round two matches that we did see. Chicago taking the first, Toronto taking the second, so they'll advance on. In the losers bracket, we saw the Paris Legion go up against the London Royal Ravens. And after losing to Toronto, the London Royal Ravens had kind of had it. They're like, we ain't going out. We're sick of this. Battle of Europe, no, this is just, we are Europe. And so they took a decisive 3-1 victory over the Paris Legion. Only real close map in that series was probably the first Gunrunner hardpoint that the London Royal Ravens took, 250 to 211. And their domination woes still continued in that Hackney Dom. They lost that to the Legion pretty convincingly. They got obliterated in that Hackney Dom. Paris Legion took that 187 to 112, but then London Royal Ravens like, we ain't about it. It's blackjack, quoting zero. It's just a gamble whether they'll win a Dom or not. They can't even promise their fans a win. We'll just go to the table and see what we're dealt with that one. But They definitely had a royal flush going in a different card game, but whatever. They had a royal flush going to that Ramazda hard point where they took that 250 to 128. So this was kind of the start of the London Royal Ravens revenge tour as they would go through the losers bracket and eventually make it all the way into top four to make it to this weekend for the championship. Is there anything in this matchup that you kind of wanted to discuss or point out? I don't think there was really anything crazy for me in this one, but on this weekend though, like at the beginning of the year, I said Shawnee was a budget rated. This man ain't budget anyone. This man is going off. Holy cow. He is probably like the second best player on this team. Like he's having a crazy champs performance, in all honesty.
I hope you mean that the best player on their team this champs has been Zero. Oh my word. Man is unbelievable. And did you see that video that Scraps posted?
No, I did not.
Okay, so oh my gosh, he was breaking this down. He posted a clip and he says, see if you can see this or catch it or whatever. And then he makes a video breaking it down. He is so twisted out of his mind that he whops somebody on Cave, and they didn't play Cave. This was like some CDL, scrim or something like that. And he buries somebody like underneath stone on P1, and then whips it where tower is and catches a glimpse of a red enemy tag and is almost about to fire on this. And the glimpse is literally like a millisecond. It is maybe like 2 frames and he catches it. It's just absolutely unreal. This London Royal Ravens roster has like supercharged itself.
Yeah, Zero's having a great chance, but I really did want to kind of highlight Shawnee because that's not something you kind of expect from that player. I don't feel like Zero's gotten a lot of flack. Maybe in recent times he has, but I've always thought of Zero as a pretty solid player all around, but I don't think a lot of people have thought about that for Shawnee. And I did give him a lot of flack at the start of the year calling him budget rated, but so I wanted to praise him, especially he's just having a fantastic champs all around. In S&D, in Hardpoint, he is making some incredibly smart, intelligent plays to help out this London Royal Ravens roster. And while Zero is frying and just absolutely destroying people, I feel like Shawnee's making some really intelligent heads-up plays.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they're in the top 4 in champs.
Yeah,
they played amazingly, unbelievably good. Yeah, I'm really, really impressed with London.
All right. Well, that was our losers round 2 first match. Our second losers round 2 matchup was the Minnesota Rocker versus Optic Gaming LA. Optic Gaming LA, they took this 3-0 over the Minnesota Rocker. Only thing that was close was the Azir hardpoint. That was a 250 to 244. Outside of that, though, Optic Gaming just mollywopped them right out of existence, and they move on for a play date with the Florida Mutineers. You have anything to add to that one? I think that was just kind of pretty clean cut.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was kind of a blowout. I'm not even going to lie.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to our winners round 3 first matchup, we saw the Atlanta FaZe versus the Chicago Huntsmen. This was an insane back and forth series. You had FaZe taking the first map, Chicago taking the second in around 11. FaZe bounced back with the third. Chicago bounced back with the fourth. And all of a sudden, it's game 5 in Atlanta FaZe. They're able to sneak that out, that Ramazda S&D 6-4 against the Chicago Huntsmen to make it to the winners finals. And honestly, I feel like Chicago somewhat threw away that Ramazda S&D. They had some very unfortunate plays, some very unfortunate timings. I feel like a lot of Chicago's woes, maybe not woes, but there were so many times in kind of this FaZe matchup and their Optic matchup where there was just terrible timings.
Yeah, just 50-50
on the side of the Huntsmen that as soon as they would like look away to go do something else, they would get shot by the guy that came around the corner that they were pre-aiming for like a good 30 seconds. Or maybe like the highlight play in this one that was just so unfortunate was the Pristini nade that hit Envoy. on
Oh
that
yeah.
Ramazza search. But this was a really, really good matchup and a lot more entertaining than the first time we saw these two teams played. So I'm very satisfied with that.
Oh yeah. I think this was probably the second most viewed video this or sorry series this weekend. Super fun to watch. I think whenever I saw it the max, I think it was like 250,000 people were watching. It's unbelievable to think that 250,000 people were streaming this match, and there's a bigger one.
Yeah, and I think it was like I was it day 4 or day 5 where the stream almost reached like 1 million views, and I think it was around 5 hours or something. It got really, really close to
It was definitely day
breaking
5.
1 million views. It was day 5. I
Yeah,
couldn't remember if it
so
was day 4 or not because you had that Chicago Atlanta matchup, but
no, that's what I'm saying. The Chicago Atlanta matchup, I think it was like 250,000 was the max. The next day, dwarfed it. Oh my gosh, game like day 5, man.
day 5 was insane because it was all elimination matches was the thing. That's probably why it was so crazy and
Yes.
so much fun to watch. But that was the Atlanta FaZe versus Chicago Huntsman matchup. Moving on to our winners round 3 match 2 that we did see. It was a rematch from the previous homestand event, the Toronto Ultra versus the Dallas Empire. And unfortunately, this is where Toronto's Cinderella run through the winners bracket comes to an end. They lose 3-2 to the Dallas Empire. And the two maps that they won were incredibly close in going the other way. The Gunrunner Dom that they won was a 158 to a 155, and then the St. Petro S&D was a 64. And Placer fell off the map. He managed to fall off the map. I think that is something that's going to happen every year, and I feel like it has to happen every year.
I think the biggest thing from this Dallas Toronto series that I can confidently take away from is how much momentum Toronto had, and Dallas still pretty decisively ended it. There was never a moment like the score lines were not bad for Toronto. Don't get me wrong. They played really well. But Dallas just seemed to be strictly better. Dallas is a very scary team. And I mean, the fact that they haven't really played, you know, what? They played once. So, I mean, Dallas has been absolutely lights out. And I am seriously concerned for my predictions because I have them maybe not going to the grand finals. And after just this series alone, it's like Toronto is pretty good. They had a lot of momentum. They just won a home series. They're doing great in tournaments. It's about to be a Cinderella story. And you get shut down like that.
Yeah, and I feel a lot more confident in saying Dallas will beat Atlanta in the first time these two teams face off in the winners bracket, but I still feel pretty comfortable in thinking that Atlanta will beat Dallas in the rematch simply because there's so many more maps to be played in that rematch because it would be a best of 9.
Right. We'll see.
But,
We'll definitely see.
but yeah, we're worried for your predictions. We'll go back and we can change them because I know you had, I believe, Dallas losing to Chicago in the losers finals. But we'll get there in a bit. We're still going through some of these matches, so let's not get ahead of ourselves, I guess. Moving on to our losers round 3 matchup, though, it was London Roll Ravens taking on the New York Subliners, and the Ravens took that in 3-2 fashion over the Subliners. Quite unfortunate, I guess, for the Subliners. One thing I forgot to bring up during that Minnesota matchup was they played Petrodome.
Yeah.
The one thing I had said is we can expect that New York will not play a Petrodome this event. They played it once. They played against Minnesota, and they won it pretty convincingly, but I think they only did that because Minnesota, I don't think they have a lot of reps on Petro. Minnesota is a 2-4 Petro team. So I think New York might have just played Petrodome against Minnesota because they believed they could beat them, and then they thought that if they had beat them by enough, it might convince other teams like, oh, they can play Petro now. Maybe like they leave it open or something and play some mind games with the teams or something. I don't know. Uh, that or they just really wanted to play Petro against Minnesota because they knew it was their weakest domination map.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Something along the lines.
It is very hard
But
to tell. The pick and bans are, I mean, it's like a secret kind of style that they always try to do. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna outsmart this guy, and then they end up. I mean, from what I understand, all these analysts they just come up with all these numbers, and at the end of the day, the players are like, well, let's just ball don't lie almost. So, I think that
a lot of kind of teams' preferred map sets could have changed during the 3 weeks leading up to playoffs too. Is
a lot of them would have because they're.
I think
trying
a
to
lot
make,
of them did, to be honest.
yes,
Like
they're all trying to
looking
make
at
like
some of the maps that were picked and some of them that weren't, like I feel like there was I haven't gone back and kind of looked at it incredibly closely. And I don't want to spend the time to do that in this podcast because as we know it would take a while. We don't want to have another 3-hour podcast.
yes, no,
So
let's not do that.
we're going to keep it short. And so I'm not going to dive into all the crazy stats stuff. But if you did, I believe I tweeted out this stats page. So if you want to look at those yourselves, you can find that. That's obviously on my Twitter at ShadyBacon on Twitter. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure a lot of kind of these teams' preferred maps have changed. Just kind of looking at it in a general sense and kind of what teams were playing, I feel like it wasn't the maps that they liked to play a lot. Just kind of looking at it very vague through a very vague lens of kind of what I kind of recollect and then what I was seeing teams play.
Like I said, it's at the end of the day, yeah, it might matter in some like minor statistical anomaly, like oh yeah, we played this map 11 times, we haven't won since. Like let's not play it. But a lot can change in 3 weeks. I know that Scump was talking about it on T's podcast. He said that they were really strong in one dom map and really weak in one dom map, so they decided to kind of sharpen up the other one just in case. That's kind of how the vetoes needed to go. So those little minor changes, those micro changes that we talk about, I mean that's why they do them. So it has been nice to see a lot of the changes come into play and really see the coaches come into action and their responsibilities to the team come to life with COD champs.
Yeah. All right. But that was our losers round 3 first matchup. Second matchup was the Florida Mutineers versus Optic Gaming LA. Once again, Optic Gaming LA, they take a convincing 3-0 over their opposition. The Azir Hardpoint took that 250 to 14, blew them out on the Gunrunner S&D. That was a 6-1, and then they took a very close Hackney domination, 158 to 154. And so that nets Optic Gaming a matchup against the Chicago Huntsmen, old Optic versus new Optic. Probably the best series that we saw during the playoff weekend. And so before that, we're going to have to cover our losers round 4 match 2 matchup, which was the London Royal match 2 first matchup of losers round 4, Toronto Ultra versus the London Royal Ravens. And the London Royal Ravens took this 3-1 over the Toronto Ultra and got themselves into that top 4, extending their playoff journey into the championship weekend.
Yeah, this was pretty impressive. This is when like kind of the light switch turned on and said, "Oh, we should start paying attention to him now."
Yeah, I feel like London Royal Ravens was probably a team that was not on anyone's radar to really make it top 4. Like you could see New York making it, you could see Florida making it, you could see Toronto making it. I think people could even realistically see Optic Gaming LA making it, but I don't think anyone, at least not a lot of people, had London Royal Ravens making it into top 4. I certainly know that they were not on in my field of view as a team that I thought could make it into top 4 at champs.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, like I said, the London boys played out of their minds this weekend. They can carry any amount of that energy moving forward in a champs, which I'm sure they will, or it might be even better. If it's even better, these guys could be looking at a grand finals. Every team right here, all 4 of these teams have the potential to win this. They've all looked incredibly good, and I'm really, really, really excited for champs.
That was our first qualifying match. Our second qualifying match for champs was the Chicago Huntsmen versus Optic Gaming LA in the bangerest of banging series that we saw over the playoffs weekend. Chicago Huntsmen narrowly edge out Optic Gaming 3-2 in a game 5, round 11. They tried their damnedest to lose a gunrunner hard point, which they still managed to win 250 to 241. Honestly, watching that hard point play out gave me so much anxiety because Chicago tried so hard to throw their lead and just chalk that one. Oh my gosh, they made some really, really bad plays on that map. They lost the gunrunner hardpoint 6-4. That was off the back of some stellar S&D from Optic Gaming, also some pretty abysmal timing from the Huntsmen.
No kidding.
They went St. Petrograd Dom, which is very interesting because I don't think that's one of Chicago's favored maps, and I know that's one of Optic Gaming's better domination maps. Even though Optic Gaming LA, they went flawless in the domination on the weekend, a perfect 4-0. I still think I feel like the Chicago Huntsmen probably should have wanted to play them on Hackney, since Optic, they had played 2 Hackneys, they'd won both of them, but they were by very slim margins. And I think that's probably one of Chicago's more frequently played domination maps, but maybe this Petro was something that they had put in the works for champs and they felt comfortable on it. They had 3 weeks to prepare, and so maybe they just kind of wanted to roll with it. They haven't played Gunrunner or Petro all that frequently in domination. 4-1 on Gunrunner, now 4-2 on Petro. So they'd played Petro more frequently than they had Gunrunner. But Petro's like one of their very inconsistent maps where they're winning on average by 61 points and on average they're losing by 70 points. So St. Petro is a very flip or flop map for the Chicago Huntsmen, that it seems. So they lose that one to Optic Gaming LA. They take the Ramazda hardpoint 250 to 218, and then they win a crazy Arklov peak S&D 6-5.
I think that's this. Oh my gosh! For those who haven't seen it, which I couldn't imagine who it is at this point. Probably gotta be one of the most watched COD videos this entire season. If you did not watch that round 11, it is breathtaking.
That whole S&D was breathtaking.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But that
whole series was insane.
Oh yeah, no, definitely the best series of potentially all time.
Certainly the best series of MW.
Oh,
I'm thinking.
For sure. Well, champs hasn't happened yet. I'm very excited to see this best of 9 slog fest that we're gonna embark on the journey here come this weekend. No, I'm Optic. Gosh, they were just this close. They were absolutely so close. 1v1. Imagine the kind of ice in Envoy's veins, though. You're playing for the difference between like minimum 350,000 to minimum 450,000. So $100,000 comes down to 1 kill at the very end of a search and destroy match.
Dude, I was actually kind of getting flashbacks to the formal Lacefield 1v1 from BO4 in that scenario.
Oh,
where you're like, who's going to die? I see the perspective, whose body's going to drop. It's just so incredibly nerve-wracking. And like the start of that that round too, Perstini hit a side flank and saw 3 of them and just instantly got beamed. But like he could have picked up 2 kills there potentially before getting destroyed. Like if their reaction time was just a bit slower, and so they had man advantage, fast rushing B bomb site. Like holy cow, that was insane.
Yeah, but
and Envoy had to make like there were so many clutch plays the Huntsmen had to make to win that, because you had a isolated 1v1 between Envoy and Slasher, so that Envoy could hit that flank. around to the front of the bomb site, and then you had Scump finessing out of his mind for Arcides to come in and pick up a two-piece at the counter. Oh,
Not to
like
mention the
just
one that Scump picked up after the first guy
yeah,
ran into the room. Like the trigger
absolutely
discipline.
insane.
The trigger discipline. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. It was just so fast. And the thing is that Optic should have 100% won that round. That is such a very hard strat to beat, especially when you're up 4v5 because you got the guy who got the information first. I I I wonder if
And you
like
know what? Pristini might have been saving all of the huntsmen out for like Pristini and Arcides especially must have been saving all of their good juju for this matchup against Optic because Pristini put on a freaking
he
performance
was great.
in this Chicago OGLA matchup, especially in the respawn game modes. He was popping off.
Well, Scump was talking about it. He said that they received like Pristini received a lot of negative comments from fans, and I mean the old green wall. That's a pretty scary fan base. It's a pretty big fan base.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
pulling
on it,
a point
like
five
even
eight.
with all the flack.
Well, but even with all
Even,
the flack,
even with all he was having a bad event. Like that is undoubtedly true. Like,
right?
that is a fact. His position is hard to play, and what he does for the Huntsman, there's a lot of untangibles in his job and in what he does, and he's doing his job. But he will even tell you, and I'm pretty sure he did. Like he was not playing to the level that he wanted to, and I think he's harder on himself than maybe even some of the fans are. So
Yeah, he
it
definitely
was
is.
it was very nice to see him turn it around, especially in such an important series here. In OGLA, they don't have any excuses. Both these teams were in Texas. Slasher took the boys, they packed up, they moved there for champs. So there's absolutely no excuses here. The
True.
better team won in the end.
True, and I think that we really experienced that too. It seemed like the game wasn't as laggy, and there was not any weird bugs that were happening.
There's just a
From
lot of
previews.
really bad timing on the
Right.
Huntsman side. At least but I feel like we saw a lot more of the Huntsman perspective maybe, and so maybe that's why I feel like that. But uh, maybe Optic also had some super unlucky timings, but at least from like the perspective that I was shown, Optic or Huntsman had some really unfortunate timings there, especially in S&Ds.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. It's timing.
Timing,
With
clutch plays. Uh,
reactions. That's all
so
it is.
that was the playoffs weekend. FaZe, Dallas, Huntsman, and the London Royal Ravens, they all extend their championship journey one more week, and we'll see them play this weekend at Champs. First matchup, I imagine, is probably going to be FaZe versus Dallas in the winners bracket finals. Then you have Chicago taking on the London Royal Ravens in the losers bracket, where the winner of that will face the loser of the upper bracket. And then obviously on Sunday, we have that best of 9 finals. The MVP, though, they did announce that. That went to Shotzi, and I think out of the MVP candidates, that is probably the best choice. On that list, you had Envoy, you had Celium, you had Simp, and you had Skies. And the reason I think that it was deservedly so to Shotzi is because I look at kind of the MVP in two aspects. One, are they the most valuable player on their team? And then would they be the most valuable player on another team? And so if you look at the FaZe lineup, and this is why I don't think it should have gone to either of the FaZe guys, either Simp or Celium, is you can realistically take Simp or Celium off that lineup, and they would still be a top 3 team, undoubtedly, simply because of the rest of the talent on that roster.
No doubt. I
And so the play
Go ahead.
Envoy, I feel the same way. I think if you take Shotzi out of the Dallas Empire and put another player in there, another like average player, I don't think that team is a top 3 team anymore. And then the other side of it is if you take Shotzi out of that team and put him into another team, does he help improve that team? And I think undoubtedly that answer is yes. And so I think with looking at kind of both of those sides of what I see as an MVP player, I think it deservedly so went to Shotzi.
Oh yeah, kid's nuts. And interestingly enough, Shotzi, made a crazy transition and was playing not really that well in LAN. In all honesty, the new kid coming up, and
First two events were certainly
your
rough,
first
but
events were rough.
yeah,
Um,
he had a huge turnaround at that Los Angeles event
yeah,
that they won.
definitely did. And the whole Empire team really did. They kind of started to get into form, and then Shotzi was like, "All right, yeah, well, we're still waiting to see what comes of him." But after the transition to online, it was like he was twisted the entire time. Like you couldn't do anything to, really beat him in a 1v1 against subs. Like he was probably favored, I don't know, probably like 70% of the time, 80% of the time, maybe. That's unbelievable. Kid's out of his mind, and he played very, very well this season. It would be a shame if the MVP didn't win champs, but I think Dallas, like I said earlier on, Dallas has a very, very good chance of taking this whole thing.
Yep, they definitely do. And I think that kind of really covers, I guess, all of the talking points that I had from playoffs. I think the only really other one on here is Clayster's predictions. They were on point. I think he went 11 and 14 or something in terms of matchup predictions. And then I did see some complaints about the format coming from JCap. Don't even know why he's talking. He's not even playing. Honestly, he'll be lucky to get picked up by a team, I think, next year, at least if I'm a GM. But he's probably saying that because OGLA, they started in the losers bracket. They deservedly so started in the losers bracket. They had an abysmal season. They went on a crazy run, yes, at champs, but you can't just, like, they were lucky to even be at champs because originally they weren't going to be. If the league wasn't completely online, they weren't going to be at champs. It was only going to be, I think, like the top, I think someone said it was only going to be the top 6 teams. I was under the impression it was going to be the top 8 teams. Maybe there was some change in the middle of the season or a little bit before it went to online that occurred. But that's kind of what a playoffs is. The regular season has to have some amount of significance. Otherwise, it's like, why even bother having a regular season? And that can be a whole debate in and of itself. If with this franchise league, if you think it should just be tournaments and there shouldn't be a regular season, or if you think there should be a regular season and there should be a playoffs. There's a lot of discussion that can be around the formatting of the league. However, with the format that they have, with there being a regular season, there has to be some significance to it. Otherwise, why even bother with it? And so, yes, maybe it wasn't ideal with kind of how the bracket was shaped up. You want everyone to be on an even playing field once you go into playoffs and not have teams start in the losers bracket, but there's only 12 teams in the league. So you can't really do it a lot of other ways. You could make it so that all of those, like every team starts in winner's bracket, but then you got an extremely long, extended playoffs that they probably simply don't have the time to do. And a lot of people are saying, oh, it's ridiculous that Atlanta and Dallas, they only have to play one match to go to champs. Well, that's what happened because of the bracket. Like, there's if you can think of a better way of doing it with giving the regular season significance, please state it, because I doubt it would. There's probably a reason why it wouldn't work or why it's a crappy idea. So I'm just tired of people complaining about things that mean very little, and they're just not very adept to change and just don't like it because their team was dealt a bad hand in a sense. But we're going to move on, I think, to give our predictions for what we're going to see from the championship weekend. In our losers matchup for that weekend, all of us had Chicago taking on Florida. That's now changed, obviously, to Chicago taking on the London Royal Ravens. And I'm still going to go with Chicago in this series. I think Chicago is going to take it in the end, 3-2, 3-1, something along those lines. What do you kind of think is gonna happen there now that you've seen these two teams play in playoffs?
I think historically, London has been one of the least clutch teams. They've lost more round 11s than anyone else. And the only notable time they won a round 11 was against Toronto this weekend. I got Chicago all the way. They have ice in their veins. They are so clutch right now. They make hero plays like nonstop. And a lot of that's what's going to come down to, who's the better team is who can really, make it count. And I think that it's going to be a close one for sure. I think both these teams, all four of these teams are absolutely outrageous. I think that right now, Chicago takes this 3-2. Round 11,
I think it's going all the way to. You thinking it's going all the way to round 11?
I do. I really do. I think they both have really good search and destroy. Except for whenever London is facing a round 11. If they're able to clean sweep, have a good series or whatever, that'd be great. I think that.
I think it's just that domination.
The domination will be the deciding factor. I think they split the hard points and split the search and destroys. And I think you're right. I think it'll come down to the dom as well. But like I said, at the end of the day, they're very, very evenly matched. Very evenly matched. I just think that there's going to be more hero plays going into the search and destroy. So I'm going to have to give this Chicago 3-2.
Okay. All right. So in our winners finals, all of us had the Atlanta FaZe versus Dallas Empire. Are you still going with Atlanta FaZe over Dallas 3-2? I'm sticking with Dallas taking this over Atlanta. I had 3-1, could definitely be a 3-2, but I'm sticking with my prediction of Dallas taking this over Atlanta.
I think part of me really wants to agree with you because Dallas played so well against a very tough Toronto team, and Atlanta did not play that great against Chicago. In all seriousness, they're not the Atlanta that we're kind of used to seeing. They played fine, like they got the win and everything, but it seemed like there was something a little off. So I would imagine that you're probably not off. I think Dallas secures their spot in the grand finals with a decisive win over Atlanta, probably 3-2. It could be a 3-1 though.
Yeah, but it could also be. Chicago's a strong team. Atlanta's obviously a strong team. OGLA, a strong team, at least in the playoffs. Maybe Toronto just wasn't as good as all those other teams. That could definitely be a thing. They beat London, and then they beat Florida, but who knows at this point? The power levels of these teams, it's hard to really grasp just from the matches that they played. But that is something that kind of lingers in the back of my mind is maybe this Toronto team simply wasn't as good as the opposition that Atlanta faced. And so maybe that's why Dallas looked so incredibly dominant in that, or maybe it's just Dallas is incredibly dominant. That is something that's in the back of my mind. So you're switching it to Dallas 3-2 over Atlanta?
Yeah, let's go with the 3-2. Gosh.
Okay.
It's going to be unbelievable, though.
All right, so now in our losers final, we both have an Atlanta versus Chicago rematch. Who do you have taking this?
Man.
Now, Atlanta's off of a hot loss, and
Right.
Chicago's off of a win.
I'm got to give it to Chicago here. I really do. I think it's going to be a 3-2, even though it's going to be a nuts 3-2. Usually whenever teams of the same caliber rematch, it tends to go the other way. I've been wrong with, like, for example, when Chicago and Dallas played early on and Dallas just couldn't get it out of their heads. I don't think that's the same issue though. I'm pretty sure right now Chicago takes this over Atlanta. I could be wrong. I could 100% be wrong. They're both very, very talented teams. Gut feeling says go with Chicago. I think that they're just playing out of their minds.
So you're going with Chicago 3-2 over Atlanta?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to stick with Atlanta 3-2 over Chicago. Scump really likes third place. I think he has the most third place finishes
That's
out
enough
of
money. Let's just throw
out of any player in honestly, you look at his champs history, it's a lot of third places. A lot of third places. What? It was third place in Ghosts. I don't know what they got in AW. I think that was like top 8. And then actually, is it a lot of third places? I don't know why I feel like it's a lot of third places. Maybe I'm just remembering like that Ghost. Well, no, they got third in Black Ops 2. They got third in Ghosts, and then they got third last year. They got third last year as well. I feel like there's maybe a lot of non-champs tournaments where they also got third, because I feel like there was this just huge amount of time where it was like Cole's getting first, Optics getting third, Envy's getting second, just like continuously over and over again. Maybe that was just like that Black Ops 2 Ghosts era, because as we know in AW, Optic was pretty darn good, dominating a lot of the time outside of champs. Same with BO3, dominating a lot of the time outside of champs, and then IW, dominating kind of on and off throughout the season. But I'm going to stick with Atlanta, 3-2 over Chicago. So I'm going to have it Dallas versus Atlanta final. And I believe you are going to now have a Dallas versus Chicago final. So I'm sticking with a 5-4 win for Atlanta in this rematch. What are you going with?
Ooh, so tough. Dallas versus Chicago. Imagine all of the drama from the beginning of the season amassed into the grand finals.
I just think Dallas is too clean to lose to Chicago, especially if they have a one map advantage. Like,
yeah, I think Dallas probably takes this 5-3.
5-3, yeah. I don't know who I would like to see. I feel like any of these teams, I feel like I would like. At this point, I'm just happy with some good Call of Duty at the end of the day. I want some crazy games like 250 to 248, 249. I want a tie. I want a tie. That is what I want. I want some hard point ties. I want some domination ties in this championship. That is what I want.
Yeah.
Because I like all the players on these teams. I don't think there's a person left that I don't like as a player, as a personality, as a person. And so I'm happy with any of these teams winning. It would be insane if London won. I just don't see it being in the realm of possibilities. So in the end, I'm going to stick with what I had before playoffs, and I'm going to give it to Atlanta in the end. But yeah, if Dallas keeps on playing the way they are, could definitely go Dallas's way in that grand finals. But you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm just super excited. I can't talk about it anymore because I'm just gonna make myself more upset that it's not right now, and we still have to wait a few days.
You gotta wait 4 more days. 4 more days. Well, for us, we're recording this on a Tuesday. For you guys, this is probably gonna get out on Thursday, I'm assuming. So you'll only have 3 more days, I guess.
What?
You could say.
No, you can't math, dude.
Well, yeah, Thursday. It gets out on Thursday. You have to wait Thursday, then you have to wait Friday, and then you have to wait a couple of hours into that Saturday.
Speaking of recording,
So,
we didn't
3
really touch
days.
on this yet, but what do you think about Adam AP talking about pre-recording all the matches and everything to prevent what potentially could have happened to Kenny?
It makes sense, and that's like what they're doing now. It's honestly what they should have been doing. I feel like the league didn't think people were going to get booted offline, which, yes, you want to be positive about that because you want to do it live to have those live reactions, and so that there's a sense in watching it when it's live. It's like, wow, anything can happen. When it's pre-recorded, I feel like for some reason some people, it loses a bit of the hype. But I mean, because I don't know if league's doing their stuff live. I assume they are, but I haven't heard of any issues with them doing it live. And obviously they're like not pre-recorded. I haven't heard of any issues of people getting booted offline. I literally think it's just like this COD thing. Like, I don't know why it's so easy for anyone to get COD players IPs. Like, it shouldn't be a thing.
I mean,
but
the game,
knowing that now, and knowing just, I guess, I don't know if it's that they're leaking them some way or they're using some app or whatever. Like with that knowledge now, 100% everything, it's got to be pre-recorded because you don't want to go into any of these championship matches and have someone have an internet issue. Like that is the last thing you want.
I sincerely hope we don't see a 4v5. I might lose my mind.
Yeah, it would be very, very unfortunate if we saw anything along those lines happen. So, but those are our, I guess, updated predictions for champs. Not too much change. I think some of us just have a lot more faith in Dallas now than we did before, and maybe even Chicago potentially. But that kind of wraps it up. Not going to dive into the stats for it since I feel like we did a lot of that in the prior podcast. So if you want to kind of see a lot of our analysis on why we think certain teams will win certain matchups going into this championship, obviously the Chicago London matchup, that's going to be slightly different since we had Chicago Florida in our original predictions. But you can probably skip to about 2 hours and 15 minutes maybe in that podcast that came out the prior weekend. If you kind of want to get our analysis on these Atlanta, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas matchups and why we kind of believe these matches will turn out the way that we discussed them in this podcast. But that's going to be it from us here. I hope you guys all have a fantastic weekend watching the Call of Duty Championship. It's the last one of the year. After this, there is no more Modern Warfare. And the next episode that we will have will be discussing the results of COD Champs and then discussing the new Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War game and what we want to see from that and the league kind of moving forward into its second year. So that is it from us, and we will see you all next time.
Peace.